The views or opinions expressed on Ann Arbor Inclusive do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the City of Ann Arbor and the Commission on Disability Issues. For more information about the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, please visit a2gov.org/disability resources.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ann Arbor Inclusive. I'm Zach Damon. We have a wonderful show for you today as Doug Armstrong, the founder and CEO of North Star Reach, joins us in studio. And Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach.
Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to get the ball rolling if we may. For those that don't know, North Star Reach was founded in 2007, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide a life-changing camp experience for children with serious health challenges. I'm curious, what was it that led you to start North Star Reach?
I'm a nurse and have worked at the University of Michigan Health System for a number of years in different capacities, and the majority of that time was spent at in the Organ Transplant Center. And so working with both adults and children who've received a life-saving organ transplant, and talking to some of those kids in clinic mentioned something about, it's almost time to apply to summer camp, and they all went, no, we can't go to camp. And I said, what do you mean you can't go to camp? And parents said, well, we've tried and we've applied, but because of the medications and their medical history and things, the camps won't accept them. And I was a camper growing up, grew up in Michigan, fortunate to have lots of opportunities to go to overnight camp, and really believe that those experiences that happen only at camp, you know, being independent and away from your parents for a while, trying new things, making new friends, sort of were very foundational for me and helped shape the person I was. And I thought it was a big problem that these kids who'd already been cheated out of much of their childhood had yet another barrier to, you know, a rite of passage. And so got together with another nurse friend of mine, and we started taking organ transplant kids to camp, and that was in 1998.
Wow.
And you know, using a leased model where we rented space from a YMCA camp somewhere in Michigan, and we loaded up a 24-foot trailer full of borrowed supplies.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, go up to camp and logistically create a health center that didn't really exist to take care of these kids, manage their medications, carry wheelchairs up and down stairs, whatever accommodations we needed to do to make camp happen. And while that model was good, I knew there could be better. And so found out that the University of Michigan had some property they were not planning to use, had been a camp in the past, hadn't been used in 25 years. They were going to sell it to a developer and build condominiums. And this property's in Pinckney. It's on Patterson Lake, so it's 20 miles from Ann Arbor. We were going up to Oscoda.
Oh, wow.
4 hours north. When kids got sick, then we had to have a little powwow as a medical team and say, well, are we okay with a 4-hour ambulance ride back to Ann Arbor, or do we need a helicopter? And so having a camp 20 miles down the road, close to Ann Arbor, having a facility that we could dedicate to really serving children and their families, having control over the schedule so we could have more than just sort of the last week of the summer, which the YMCA camp would make available to us, and having it close to definite medical care, and finally having a facility that's custom built and designed to really accommodate the needs that any of these kids might have, and a health center that can deliver complex care. It was kind of a no-brainer. And so this became an opportunity to get more kids to camp.
Well, and Doug, I find it incredible that, I mean, because this idea is incredibly complex. You know, the vision that you had is incredibly complex. I mean, having a location, like you said, that has that camp aspect, but at the same time is close to medical care if needed. I mean, my goodness, were there times when, you know, you said to yourself, gee, you know, I'm just not sure, and how did you work through those challenges?
You know, at many different points along this journey, certainly people asked me and said, is this really going to happen? And the answer was always, absolutely. It's got to happen. the next question was, when is it going to happen? That was the question that I didn't really have an answer for,
Sure.
and said, you know, I don't know. I was really determined to keep pushing and carrying this until we, you know, opened camp. And we organized in 2007.
Okay.
And, you know, the stock market is a big topic in the news today.
Sure.
Well, it was in 2007 as well,
That's
because in August of 2007, when we got our IRS stamp of approval for our nonprofit, was the day that the stock market had the single biggest drop it had had historically. And so that was a really challenging time to go out and try to recruit money to basically build a concept or a dream.
Sure.
And, you know, there were people struggling to fund and keep existing organizations that have been around for years open and operational.
Sure.
And here I was, hey, pick me. I've got this great idea.
Right.
And so I got a lot of people that said, this is a great idea. This needs to happen. Come back to me when it's a little further along.
Oh.
And so I kept good notes.
There
and
we go.
you know, it did take 3 or 4 years to really build some momentum in the fundraising department and really get some dreamers like myself on board who said, yes, I want to make this investment, and I believe in you, and I believe in this concept, and want to help make it happen. And once we got a couple of those big commitments, then everybody else who'd said, come back to me, started to take notice. And I made those follow-up calls, and we were successful in raising around $26 million to build camp and provide the initial operational funding to get camp open and operating.
Well, and I think you're a living, breathing example of the quote, if you can dream it, you can do it. And, you know, the fact that you are a guy, too, of action. You know, what you say is what you do, I think is very inspiring. And I wanted to go back to your mission statement, too. And your mission statement says that you want to provide a life-changing camp experience for children with serious health challenges. And I just want to go back because, you know, you talked earlier about how important that camp experience was for you. But what specifically was important in that experience, and why is your mission important?
Well, you know, again, I think that as you grow up, you come to inflection points where you need to make decisions.
Sure.
And those decisions are often based on the environment that you're in, the past experiences that you've had, the role models that you've come close to. And camp seems to be a place, or at least it was for me, where I had amazing role models, where I was put in environments to make decisions and even make mistakes, but in a safe environment where I could freely choose, make a mistake, understand the consequences, and recover from that. And that's life. And so those life lessons that came at camp were important to me. And so it certainly seems that children who've based their life around their next medication dose, their next hospital appointment, their next procedure, maybe haven't had some of those other sort of natural foundational experiences. They grow up way too fast. And so this seemed to be an opportunity to give them back a little bit of their childhood, give them a little sense of normalcy, surround them with children who are just like them, because they're very different in their daily environment. When they're in school or in their peer groups, they may be the only one who has to leave class in the middle of the day to take a dose of medication, or who looks or acts a little differently, or misses big chunks of school. And so suddenly, when they're looking around the room at camp and there's 100 other kids just like them, they're feeling something they haven't felt ever, or maybe in a long time. That it normalizes that experience. And what we see is that those kids spend that first 24 hours at camp. Hey, do you take that blue pill? Do you have a scar that looks like this? Have you had to go through this operation? And they start comparing notes and really focusing on the medical piece. And once they find out, yep, got all those, I'm the same as you, all of that goes away. It takes a back seat, and it's, hey, Zach, you want to go fishing with me? Hey, you want to go to arts and crafts or go swimming? You know, they're kids doing kids things, and they're not self-conscious. They're not worried about being different. They fit in, and that's a really powerful experience to witness and be a part of, but then even to facilitate. You know, I call it a guilty pleasure. The more that I invest in camp to make that experience safe and secure and meaningful for those kids, the more I take away myself. And it's sort of a win-win proposition. And so then I work a little harder to try to focus on the experience, and yet I reap even more benefit. And another part of our mission is that camp's no cost to children. And so that's important. All these kids have barriers, and we don't want cost to be a barrier that keeps them out of camp.
Well, and you touched on it. It is very, very powerful to get that camaraderie and understand that you are not alone in this world, and that others do face similar or the exact same challenges that you face. Was working within the medical community, was that something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, as we were talking earlier, you know, my mom keeps everything, and she kept a book that started in kindergarten, and it had some check boxes. When I grow up, I want to be, and my best friend is, and my favorite food is. And it's interesting. In kindergarten, it was, I want to be a doctor. Then in first grade, it shifted a little bit. Astronaut and firefighter. And then second grade, all the rest of the way through elementary school, it was doctor. And so my parents are both in the science field. My mom's a pharmacist. My dad's a chemistry professor. And spent a lot of time in the laboratory or in the pharmacy or in the hospital setting, and took a natural liking to science and investigation and solving problems, putting things together. And so, and started volunteering at a very young age, at 13 and 14 in our local hospital, and at 16 and 17 at our local ambulance service, and it just reinforced that medicine and taking care of people was something that really inspired me.
Oh, well, and I think the fact that you realize that from such a young age is incredible. I mean, I don't see, you don't see a lot of that, 12, 13 years old, where they're going out and they say, you know what, no, I want to volunteer. And so I think the fact that you realize that at such a young age is incredible. And, you've also provided us today with a wonderful video about North Star Reach. So let's take a look.
Great.
What an amazing video. My goodness, you feel like you're there.
That's fantastic. We want everyone to come to camp, and if you can't, then, live it through our videos.
Wonderful. And, it's funny because I went to camp myself growing up, and there were songs in there that I remember.
Camp becomes a place where you borrow everything, and so things get recycled and live on for a long time.
Oh, and I have no doubt that it will continue to live on through what you're doing. So North Star Reach provides many services to campers, including, as you mentioned, an on-site health center with nursing staff, and you also provide a barrier-free environment for all who attend. And do you mind talking a little bit about what you mean by a barrier-free environment?
Not at all, because I think that that's important and something we've put a lot of intention behind. We talked a little bit about the cost of going to camp.
Sure.
And even the best resourced families, when a child is ill, have to make adjustments. And there are still co-pays even when you have good insurance.
Sure.
One parent may stop work. So there are impacts. And we didn't want camp to be something that families had to choose
Right.
and make sacrifices in order to make accessible to kids. Clearly, our kids have physical barriers, and
Sure,
so
sure.
designing a camp that has no stairs and has no thresholds and is completely barrier-free, making sure that all the activities we do can be accommodated in a way so that every child can fully participate and no one's left on the sidelines
Sure.
was important from a physical standpoint. We talked briefly about our medical center. We're able to deliver complex care. We can administer chemotherapy. We can do dialysis.
Can you really?
We can do breathing treatments. We can do infusions. We can manage complex medication regimens. We have kids that come on 24-hour infusions that have to be maintained. And,
My goodness.
so we've got the staff and the facility that can support all of that. So there are no medical barriers to attending camp. And finally, there's sort of the social and emotional barriers. You know, again, we work hard to create an environment that is safe.
Right.
It's medically safe, of course, but it's emotionally and socially safe.
Yeah.
It's a very inclusive community that we create, and that's something that we work at right from day one with our volunteers and continue all through camp. So kids are able to try new things, to reinvent themselves, to make mistakes, or to have either success or failure from those attempts,
Right.
and still move forward in a positive way. And so, for example, if a child is afraid of climbing up heights,
Sure.
and we have a ropes course, you know, maybe it's climbing 1 or 2 steps up the ladder is a huge accomplishment for them. That's one that's celebrated by all their cabin mates, and they're there cheering them on. And if that's all the further they get, they're celebrated just as much as the child who scampers up the ladder and goes down the zip line.
Sure.
And so it really becomes a protected and special place for these kids, and we make it so that any child who needs to come can come.
Well, and I think, again, the fact that you put them in an environment to be able to break down those barriers that have been built up with their life and with their regimen, as you talked about earlier, I think is an amazing and wonderful thing. I mean, like you said, even if you know, they go as far as they feel they can go, it's still a victory, and it still builds confidence.
And what we find is that many of the barriers that parents or kids believe are there may be perceived. And in the camp environment, with the right encouragement and the right safety nets, we're able to push well beyond those.
Sure.
And that's a really special experience to give a child, and then for them to take back and share with their family, and have parents go, I didn't think you could do that, but wow, even as simple as spending the night alone.
Okay.
Many of these parents are like, hey, they've never been away from me except in the hospital. No, you can't go spend the night at a friend's house. But, well, wait a minute, you just spent 7 nights at camp.
Yeah.
Maybe you can. And, you know, so absolutely, the self-esteem, the self-confidence that comes from those experiences is something that never can be taken away. And it's something to build on for these kids for the rest of their lives.
I mean, discovery is a great thing. North Star Reach has developed wonderful partnerships with children's health centers from across the Great Lakes region and is also a member of the Serious Fun Children's Network. So I'm curious to you, Doug, what goals does North Star Reach have set for this year?
You know, interesting. We just finished a 2-day strategic planning session
Okay.
where we were very focused on sort of where are we going and what's next.
Sure.
we're blessed to have partnerships with all of the major children's hospitals around the state, and even a couple in Chicago. And those hospitals have provided medical staff, they've provided supplies for our health center and equipment. They have sent volunteer nurses and doctors who staff our health center. And of course, they're the conduit between us and the patients and the families. And
Sure.
you know, it's their recommendation that often moves families off of the threshold of do I or don't I, and is camp a good place,
Sure.
Place to go. We've got, so we're working to build those relationships and firm those up and
Sure.
get even more involvement from those hospitals going forward. We've got some construction that we're still doing. Every year we're looking at things to add. We're going to add to our accessible canopy tour that comes off of our new treehouse that just opened last year.
Okay.
And that will take kids from platform to platform to platform and back to the treehouse. We're going to
Wow.
put a roof over the stage of the amphitheater and
Oh,
add some
wow.
lights and some changing rooms and things,
Sure.
and dress that up a bit. We're going to add a nature center. Right now we're borrowing part of our arts and crafts building, but we're going to erect a teepee and a lean-to and have a special place for nature exploration. And finally, we're going to put up a couple yurts in the woods on a platform, and that's going to be the overnight camp-out space, so
Okay.
that kids can have a little more primitive overnight camping experience at camp. And so all of those are projects that are going to happen in the spring as we get ready for camp. And then we're adding epilepsy camp
Are you really?
and bringing seizure disorder kids to camp for the first time this summer.
Wow.
as an additional session.
My goodness. So a lot of wonderful goals you have set, and of course, I'm sure they're well underway. Wonderful stuff. You know, I wanted to ask you a good question too. What kind of feedback do you have from campers and their families after they've attended?
Well, we certainly solicit some of that in that we send out surveys.
Okay.
And because we really want to know what's the impact of the experience, what can we do better,
Sure.
what are the most popular items to make sure we don't change any of those,
Sure.
the food, you know, all of those things we
Sure.
want to know. And through that process, through our social media and through just spontaneous letters, we get amazing support from families and from campers that, you know, children are there for 6 days or 7 days, and they come back visibly different,
Wow.
transformed, changed, better. They cite things as an increased ability to make friends, higher self-esteem and self-confidence, and all of those things that I think of when I think of my camp experience, we're actually accomplishing with these kids, which is really fantastic. And you know, the best phone call to get is the one that says, "What did you do to my kid?" I mean, that it's that drastic that,
Right.
that families are just profoundly appreciative. And we've talked a lot about summer camp where kids come for a week at a time. In the spring and in the fall, we'd run family weekends. And so
Okay.
we had the whole family come to camp. And so parents get to meet other parents, siblings get to meet other siblings, and in the same way that kids get to meet each other, the whole family does. And so everyone benefits from the experience.
Oh, and I think, you know, again, it's an incredible thing with what you're doing and the changes you're making in these young kids' lives. And I'm curious, can you share one great memory you have?
Yes, and I think it'll be two memories, but with the same camper,
Okay.
because we're fortunate that some of these kids can come multiple times. And while North Star Reach just opened in 2016,
Sure.
so we're just entering our third season, some of these kids are transplant kids I've been at camp with for multiple years. And,
Sure.
we have one camper, his name's Reggie, and Reggie is developmentally delayed
Okay.
and a little awkward and doesn't speak much.
Okay.
When he came to camp, really none at all. And we were playing wiffle ball,
Okay.
and Reggie's in the outfield, and you know, he's watching the butterflies and the clouds and everything. And somebody hits the ball, and it's a long pop fly ball coming right out towards Reggie, and everybody's holding their breath.
Okay.
And he looks up, and he just goes like this, and the ball just lands right in his hand.
Oh my goodness.
And everyone from both teams rushed to the field and encircled him in the biggest embrace and lifted him up as if he'd just won the World Series.
Oh my goodness.
And to see the smile on his face, and to know that we've created a community where it's not about me, it's about everybody else and making sure that they are accommodated and having a good time. And the kids just give generously and celebrate liberally. And that's a special community to be a part of. Fast forward, last year at camp, Reggie, again, kid that normally doesn't speak, up on stage singing a song in front of the group. I mean, the advancements and the maturation that this kid has developed through camp are transformational and really sort of the essence of what camp is.
Sure. So a young camper going from that, you know, sports, and then also having the confidence to go up in front and sing a song, just an amazing, amazing impact you've made. And what a great memory, what a great story. So you also touched too on how, you know, you guys are a nonprofit organization, and that everyone that attends camp can go for free, but that does not come without wonderful volunteers and wonderful donations. So how can others who wish to, how can they donate, volunteer, or attend and find out more about North Star Reach?
Well, certainly our website is the best source of information, and that's northstarreach.org. Also, our Facebook page has amazing video assets and photo libraries and blogs and stories from volunteers and from campers and from families that really capture what a special community camp is. And we're always looking for volunteers, not just medical volunteers, because all of our cabin staff and our activity staff are volunteer as well.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much, Kurt, for being on the show. And folks, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Kurt again for joining us and hope that you enjoyed the program. Please be sure to tune into Ann Arbor Inclusive next month. And as always, stay awesome, Ann Arbor.